And welcome, we're live on KVLP. We're going to discuss Urban Legends Revisited. I'm going to take the podcasters where they live and discuss urban legends in their hometowns. So it should be fun tonight. Lori, I'm going to start out with you because I know you're not feeling well, so we'll get right to it. Urban legends in Jackson, Michigan. Little Mary McNaughton. I don't know if you've heard about this one, Lori, but it was right there. There's a guy named Rusty Jones, and he's a Geek Squad guy during the day, and by night, he's part of he founded the Central Michigan's Paranormal Investigations. It's a Jackson-based group that's been checking possible hauntings since 1992. So, pretty cool, Lori. I don't know if you've heard of them. So, Geek Squad by day, Paranormal Investigator by night. And this one's about little Mary McNaughton. She was born September 5th, 1884. She was born into a very prominent family. Her grandfather was Moses McNaughton, and he was a former state senator when she was born, and mayor of Jackson when she was just a toddler. Have you heard of him, Lori? Moses McNaughton. When Mary was born, and in the summer of 1892, Mary and her family fled with her sisters Edith, Ruth, and Helen to Brighton to escape diphtheria and the typhoid breakout. She was stricken by peritonitis, and that's like a poisonous infection. Something ruptured her, and they believe her appendix had ruptured and died July 18th. Okay? The legend says, and starts with the story of Mary's mother waking up screaming one night and saying her daughter had been buried alive. She was hysterical. And so to calm her down, they visited her grave, and it was open. Scratches were found on the coffin lid and indicated that the stories were true. It's said that little Mary's spirit can be heard crying and scratching the lid of her coffin and can be seen hovering over her grave. Now, supposedly, the family didn't leave Jackson until 1906. I don't know how true this is. And in 1974, supposedly a still living relative, sibling of little Mary, said the story was ridiculous. Now, is it or not? Of course, a family member is going to say that. They don't want to have any bad things connected with the family. So, I don't know if Lori's still here, if she could fill us in or not. But that's one legend, urban legend of Jackson, Michigan. So, do you guys believe in urban legends? I believe that there's a basis to every urban legend. There has to be. Had to start somewhere. I don't know how far you could go back to prove some of it, but a legend, urban legend, whatever you want to call it, has to start from something. Michelle, did you bring fish sticks? I know, Ike. It's great. Geek Squad. Yep, isn't that great, Michelle? It's great. Okay. Do you guys believe in urban legends? Yeah, there's a basis to all these stories. There has to be. They don't start out of nowhere. Okay, another urban legend, Jackson, Michigan, was the Crouch murders. It was late November 21st or early November 22nd, 1883, when 4 members of a prominent Spring Arbor Township family were killed during an unusual fall thunderstorm. Shot to death in their beds were Jacob Crouch. He was a wealthy farmer. His daughter Eunice, who was 8 months pregnant. Her husband Henry White, and a visiting cattle drover named Moses Polly. The murders have never been solved. And before the investigation was over, 3 other people connected to the case had met their death. The haunting involves Jacob and Eunice. And since 1884, it's been said that on the anniversary of their death, the ghostly form of Eunice leaves her grave to rendezvous with her father out at his grave. The 2 ghostly images can be seen together and weeping. Folklore says the two will not rest until their murders are solved. This has never been solved, this murder. Okay, cool, like, very cool. So these murders have never been solved, ever. Will they ever be? I don't know. I suppose even now they could, exhume the graves and DNA and all that. Who knows? But this is, of course, the true story of the Crouch murders. But the ghostly apparitions are floating around in the graveyard, waiting for the murders to be solved. So interesting. This is in Jackson, Michigan. And the next one we're going to discuss is going to be the old prison. And, of course, some of the most troubled early residents stayed on Mechanic Street in the States. This was the state's first prison. It's now home to Art 634 and Armory Arts Village, but some of those original inhabitants still call the place home. The tunnel and bare cells in solitary confinement below are the hottest spots for paranormal activity. People hear voices, screams, and calls for help, and music from an old prison band. One of the spirits there is likely Hannibal the Bear, a tall, heavy, hairy man with a bad temper and growling voice who was incarcerated in 1878 and spent the equivalent of 4 of his 8 years in prison in solitary. Another is probably John Norris. He was a cruel, sadistic warden who was employed there from 1870 to 75. He ox-whipped prisoners long after he was outlawed and tied them to a cross with wet raw leather straps. And of course we all know. Oh yeah, she might, Michelle. Yeah. Yeah, she might. That's very true. Anyway, this warden, he ox-whipped prisoners and tied them to a cross with wet raw leather. And what happens when leather dries? It shrinks. So it tightened it. And eventually Norris was turned in, tried, and convicted of cruel and unusual punishment. He was told to leave Jackson and never return. But they're sure he's back there now. And they say these walls are still talking. The feelings are so strong that some of the people who go down there have actually started weeping. Bella Knott. The upstairs room of the restaurant have been reported to be occupied by several ghosts, including a woman in a blue taffeta dress who seems to be with her young daughter. There's cold spots, children crying, lights that shine from the ceiling when there are none, and doors that open and shut on their own, of course. So, lots going on in Jackson, Michigan there. But I like little Mary McNaughton's little story. How it, came down through the years. And of course the Crouch murders. Excuse me. And the old prison, you can get tours there if you like. So, I thought Jackson, Michigan is pretty interesting. In that, Jackson isn't that big. It's a pretty small area. So, lots going on in that little place there. So, we're going to move on to Chris's stomping grounds. Should be interesting. And around Lynchburg, Virginia, there's nine prominent urban legends, so to speak. You had the Vampire of Hollywood Cemetery. Chris, have you heard of this one? It's the Vampire of Hollywood Cemetery. It's a creepy story that's been floating around since the collapse of Richmond's Church Hill Tunnel in 1925. So, it collapsed way back. And when the tunnel collapsed, several workers were buried alive in the wreckage, of course. That's how it usually went. when these tunnels and mines collapsed. The legend describes a bloody figure with pointed teeth and skin hanging from its bones emerging from the cave-in and running towards the James River. The figure was pursued until it disappeared into the mausoleum of W.W. Poole in the Hollywood Cemetery. And the research shows into the vampire legend, it revealed that one survivor did manage to escape the deadly cave-in, but far from a vampire. He was Benjamin Mosby, a 28-year-old firefighter who had been shoveling coal in the tunnel. He was badly burned with broken teeth when he escaped the ruins and later died from his injuries. Supposedly these are the facts, but it hasn't stopped the legend and is a favorite haunt for ghost hunters. So, interesting. Do you know this one? Oh, you know you didn't hear about that? That's the vampire at Hollywood Cemetery. The next one you probably have heard of. It's pretty popular. I even heard about it. Buddy Man Bridge. What do you do? It's okay, Michelle. You're allowed. I get them mixed up too, which is why I have to look these up. Buddy Man Bridge. Do you remember, this starts out with an episode. Remember that episode of Friends when Joey gets so scared reading The Shining? He keeps the book in the freezer. That was great, by the way. If my laptop would fit in the freezer, that's where it would be right now. There's been several versions of these stories over the year, but there's one that I've read that gets me every time, and it goes something like this. In 1904, a recently closed asylum, an asylum prison in Clifton, was transporting inmates to a new facility when one of the transport buses overturned in Fairfax. Most of the passengers were killed, but 10 escaped. Oh, you know about this one. Cool. 10 escaped. All but 2 were found, Douglas J. Griffin and Marcus Walster. And soon after, locals began finding the remains of hundreds of skinned, half-eaten rabbits hanging from the trees. When Walster's body was eventually discovered, with a crude homemade hatchet in hand, hanging at the Fairfax station bridge, officials believed they had found their culprit and the dead bunny rampage would stop. No way. In the years that followed, dead rabbits appeared periodically, and as legend tells, an unspecified number of bodies have been found hanging at the bridge every Halloween. The approximate time of the crash. Most often, the victims were teenagers looking for a haunt, which is now known as Bunny Man Bridge. The last reported incident was in 1987, so that would be an interesting place to go to, since they still find people hanging off the bridge there. So that would be a cool place to visit. We need to really get together and go visit some of these places, all of us. That would be so cool. You know, one in every, at least one urban legend in every city we live in. So that would be kind of cool to visit, Bunny Man Bridge. Another one is Evington's Lost Locomotive, the Gorilla Train. This one I found kind of interesting. It's one of my favorites, and I can hope that maybe. Hi, Jenny. How are you? Thanks for joining us. This is a good story. I really like it. The story goes that in 1952, a Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus train derailed in Evington, just outside of Lynchburg. 35 gorillas escaped, and although they were hunted, none were ever recovered. Supposedly, they lived in the woods in and around Campbell County for the next 30 years or so, where they monkeyed around with the locals, harassing pets, stealing from gardens, and of course, peeking in houses and stuff. They harassed the family pets, and the last report of a gorilla-related incident